So the Jeffrey Epstein story, there's so many elements to this. There's so much coverage, and of course, there are a lot of people saying don't cover it anymore. But it is continues to be talked about. People talk about the personalities involved. They talk about the polling, all the process issues, and of course, the media, the press. I want to talk about the people and why this story, in the context of American history, matters. Maybe the last several decades of American history since the end of the Cold War, or even before. There's lots of elements of this story, but the most important to me is this: the Epstein story and why it's created such a political firestorm has to do with, I think, the most important story, a political story, an American story of the last 50 years. That's the decline in trust of our institutions, especially government, but not just government. It's also corporations, religious institutions. The Catholic Church, of course, took a big hit with their scandal, and the media. All of these institutions now, you don't need to be an expert in polling to know there's a decline in trust. And what is it? What is it at its core? What is driving that decline of trust? Part of it is about elites and people feeling that elites in government, in corporations, in the media, there's no accountability for them. That everybody else, the elites get the win, the elites get rich, the elites get powerful, the elites have no accountability, and everybody else gets the shaft. Where did this start? Well, it started, I think, with Vietnam and Watergate, the two seminal events in American history in the 60s and 70s that you see it in the polling. And again, doesn't take a genius to know, people's faith in government really declined. Institutions like the federal government lost their credibility. There's a polling question that's been asked for decades. Do you trust the government to do the right thing? Sometimes, always, never. You look at that chart, decline in trust in government, starting with Vietnam and Watergate, plummeted because in the earlier part of American history, people did trust the government to do the right thing. There's another polling question that's been asked over that same period of time that I think also, along with do you trust the government to do the right thing, tells the story of the context in which this Epstein story has gotten so much attention. Will your kids have the same, better, or worse economic opportunity than you did? Also began to plummet over this period of time. So there's some big stories related to the government. Talked about too, Watergate and Vietnam. There's the Iraq War, there's COVID, et cetera. Talk about those in a moment. But I believe that the context here for both the far left and the far right, the populist left and the populist right, the Bernie Sanders movement and the Donald Trump movement, is a lot about the economy. It's about jobs disappearing, not just in the Rust Belt, but all over the country, and the economic pain that causes, but also the problem for identity, including maybe especially amongst men, where their jobs that they expected didn't exist. The cost of college, the ability to buy a home, the American dream connected to buying a home, just not available for so many people over decades. The growth of income inequality, again, also over decades. These are issues that resonate on the left and the right. It's not about one party or another, one ideology or another. Same with the rise of China. Getting crap products from China, then getting COVID from China, but also seeing China rise up and feeling like elites get rich when China does well in America. American elites do well, but everybody else loses. So that's one important piece of the context of why this story is resonating so much about Jeffrey Epstein. Then there's, of course, the political track that runs with that, the polarization that we all know about. The red-blue divide, that the loudest and angriest voices on the national town square are the ones that dominate. And then we have digital media and the ability to have content at your fingertips on your phone in your house whenever you want it. What has that done? It's produced the opportunity for nonstop hate. If you hate Donna Brazile or Karl Rove, you can feed that hunger 24 hours a day. You can. In the old days, if you didn't like somebody, you had to go to the library and check out a book or get some microfiche to read about them and how much you hated them. Now it's nonstop available to you. And digital media allows everybody to have choose your own adventure. Whatever information you want, you can find. And what people have gathered around it, again, it's about the two movements that exist in this country today. What's a movement? It's not just people being casually connected to politics and ideas and a desire for change. It's about people being passionately connected. The Bernie Sanders movement, the Donald Trump movement. What do they believe? They believe that DC gets rich. And DC is an extremely rich area. The statistics are mind-boggling. I think if the American people actually knew how rich people in DC were, they'd be even more outraged. But DC gets rich and everybody else falls behind. That income inequality grows. That if you live in DC, either you are a lobbyist or you have a lobbyist. And if you live anywhere else, you don't have a lobbyist. The elites win, everybody else loses. There's no accountability for people. And the Iraq War, extremely disillusioning to people about accountability. WMD, Americans spending all this money, losing all these people, having all these people wounded over a war that the American people rendered a verdict on, that it was not a war worth fighting. Financial crisis, 2008. People lose their jobs, take huge hits in their retirement funds. And what did they see? No accountability. No one indicted. Plenty of people said, you march financial executives into Times Square and hang them, but nothing, no accountability. President Bush, someone I covered, someone I've known, lovely guy, but Bush has become one of the dirtiest words in American politics, particularly on the right, because of the financial crisis in the Iraq War and the belief that was a war for elites. It was a mistake by elites in the financial crisis, and no accountability. Then we get Barack Obama. Okay. President Obama, like the two presidents before him, President Clinton, President Bush, believed it's central. We got to unite the country. We have to create economic opportunity for everyone. And all three of them, two-term presidents, very well-meaning, each one largely a failure, particularly Bush and Obama. The Tea Party occurs during Barack Obama's time in office. Very little repair of the belief, to restore the belief that the American dream exists for everyone. Then we get to 2016. I think this is an extraordinarily important year for the phenomena I'm talking about. The fundamental change in America. Again, back to the two poll questions. Do you trust the government? And are your kids going to have the same economic opportunity you did? 2016, we had on the Republican side, Donald Trump, not a Republican, taking over the Republican Party. And on the Democratic side, if the rules had been fair, Bernie Sanders would have been the Democratic nominee, not a Democrat. Take over the Democratic Party. Another pair of institutions that we see in sharp relief in 2016, where people have lost faith in them, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. Donald Trump got ahead of that parade, as did Bernie Sanders. Donald Trump did it, and this is one of the extraordinary aspects of Donald Trump, an elite who attacks elites and makes people who are not elite feel they have a voice. How elite? Billionaire with lobbyists. Donald Trump had Paul Manafort and Roger Stone, one of the most powerful lobbying firms in Washington history, on his retainer, and others, right? And Donald Trump said, I will go to Washington and I will hold the elites accountable. Lots of obvious thematic and substantive contradictions, besides the fact that he was a billionaire with lobbyists. Lobbyists did very well when Donald Trump was president. He talks about draining the swamp. There's plenty of things where he didn't drain the swamp. But his movement invested in him the belief that he got it, that he wanted people to say, I have trust in institutions and America, making America great again. Our corporations, our government, everything will be great and people can believe in it, and that their kids will have the same or better economic opportunity than they did. Then COVID. Okay. COVID, an extraordinary blow to people's faith in government. People worried about the rules, their kids' education, whether the vaccines were safe. And this is not just a fringe MAGA set of concerns, okay? This was a shared national wonder. As much as government officials were dealing with an unprecedented situation, and you could argue the creation of the vaccine, extraordinary, but now, of course, people wondering whether the vaccine, particularly for kids, was a good idea. But COVID really undermined people's faith in our institutions to do what's right. Now, all of those things I think apply Democrats, Republicans, independents, not 100%, but these concerns, this long range feeling of something off track in America is not a partisan thing. But there is one thing that has made the people on the right have a heightened concern about institutions and about trust and about elites versus everybody else. And that's some of the pace of change in our economy. immigration, so we become a more diverse America with people speaking different languages, eating different foods, having different customs and traditions. That has made people feel, in some parts of America, undermined, that their traditional institutions no longer reflect their values and their identity. We see that in changes in race relations, in LGBTQ rights. We see that in some of the things revolving around trans and gender roles. All of these, for people largely on the right, not exclusively, but largely, have caused this same tension and the same concern of, is this my country? That these are cultural changes that elites want, but that they don't want. And that has created a propensity to make allegations about institutions, that they're promoting change for some unknown or identified but not proven group of people who want these kinds of change. Another element that's special, the right has these special issues. Young people in particular, have never lived in an America where there's trust in cultural institutions. They don't believe that, in most cases, I'd say, in many cases at least, that they're going to have the same economic opportunity as their parents. And you know why they don't? Because many of them don't have it. They're living it. It's not worry about the future. It's reality about the present. They can't even imagine buying a house. They can't even imagine having a career path that's linear. And they look at these institutions around them and they say, how could it be? How could it be that this America that I've read about in history books, learned about in school, where the American dream is available for everybody, is not available? And who do they blame? They blame elites. They blame these big institutions that are powerful and rich and have lobbyists and don't seem to suffer during COVID, get richer during COVID, don't seem to suffer in the financial crisis, even though they caused it. Americans have lost trust because they've seen it. This is not conspiracy theory. This is not made up. This is not partisan. We see from Watergate, Vietnam, and Iraq War, and financial crisis and COVID, these big institutions make mistakes. The elites, they act with impunity. They do what they want. The media is fragmented. It's confusing. It doesn't answer the question. It doesn't hold the elites accountable. And the media is, of course, made up of a lot of elites. All of this cultural change is happening so rapidly. There's no shared consensus about it. And the technology, this digital technology that's so powerful, that brings you this program, this technology just divides us and allows people to have their own enemies whenever they want it. This kind of, this phenomena, it's resulted in kind of what some calling a civic vertigo. People no longer know what to believe. And many simply then turn to the biggest conspiracies. This Epstein story occurs in that context, where people say something bad happened. We know something bad happened. We know that Jeffrey Epstein had relationships with elites, and he used those relationships to get rich and to sexually abuse young women and girls. We know that. But people want to know is, who else has been held accountable? Whether he committed suicide or was murdered, he was held accountable to some extent. Far too late, maybe not enough in every possible way in terms of restitution. But he had some measure of accountability. And why people are so upset about this, and why even some of the president's strongest supporters continue to speak out about it, is they don't see elites being held accountable. And that's what they're asking for. They're asking for it as a basic reality of what's required in America. If there's going to be a system where they can enjoy the American dream, where they can do as well or better than their parents, where they can have faith in people in public life, whether it's government or corporations, whatever it is, that they're going to say and do the right things, this has to be addressed. And that's why they continue to ask for information. Take away conspiracy theories, take away whose names might be in Epstein's system, take away the people who need to be held accountable for specific actions. What people want is to believe in America again, to believe that this will end with accountability for elites. Jeffrey Epstein was friends with and associated with some of the most elite people in this country, the most famous, the richest, the most powerful. Ro Khanna, the Democratic congressman who's been on this program, has been one of the leading voices in American life, I would say, in trying to put the focus on what matters. Here's what he said. People voted for Trump in part because they were so disgusted in the system. They thought that Washington protected the elite, protects the powerful, protects the wealthy. Jeffrey Epstein is a symbol of that. Absolutely. It's absolutely correct. He is a symbol of that. And what has to happen now is there has to be some measure of restoring people's faith in the system. Rather than being disgusted by it, Americans are skeptical of government, always have been. The founders wanted it to be that way. Some are cynical. Some will believe the absolute worst. And for some, this story will never end because for them, it's not about restoring faith. For them, it's about a game or profit or obsession. But for most of the country, in Donald Trump's America, Bernie Sanders' America, many independents, this is about restoring faith.